Yeah.
Hi, welcome to the Carol Register Show. I am so excited you're here today. We lean into all things wealth identity and leadership. And I'm so excited because Jim Cathcart is here. Listen, this is incredible what you've done, Jim. 28-time author. I mean, you are 30, what did you say, 3,500 speeches all over the world and multiple countries. And you have more than 3 million views on your TED Talks. You're in the top 1% of all TED Talks. It's incredible. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. Well, I've been blessed. I've seriously, it's kind of like I decided to take up surfing the day the waves got bigger. What I mean by that is years ago, when I was a young guy working as a government clerk for 500 bucks a month, newly married, nothing really going for me. I decided that I wanted to do what Earl Nightingale on the radio was doing, which is much like what you're doing, helping people succeed. And I had no clue what success was or how to get there, but I wanted to grow up to be like him. And sure enough, I did. And now I've done, as you said, 3,500 convention speeches all over the world. And I've
Wow.
been paid to speak in all 50 US states.
Wow.
Wow. I never expected to even see all 50 US states. Yeah.
You've been doing this for so many years. I mean, I would love for you to talk about what leadership means to you in this way, to be dedicated. And what's your why? What motivates you? What fuels you?
Absolutely. Well, my why boils down to a biblical passage. Not that it's a particularly religious why, but the biblical passage is John 10:10, where Jesus is talking and he says, I've come that they would have life and have it more abundantly.
Mm,
Well, that's what I identify with. I want to help other people live more abundantly. Now, how do you do that? First thing you do is set the example. Live more abundantly. Well, duh, right? Yeah.
right,
So I decided first thing, if I want to get into that field, I've got to be worth listening to.
right.
And so my first few years, it wasn't leadership, it was quotership.
Mm,
I was quoting other people. I
right.
was taking the things I had learned from a book that morning and teaching them to a junior chamber of commerce meeting that night.
Mm,
And then that led to more and more positions where I was in charge of a meeting or I was in charge of a project in the community, or they said, okay, who's going to be the chairman of this? Okay, you, Jim. So
yeah,
I'm put in these positions,
yeah.
and of course, leadership in its simplest form is just influencing other people to do what you intend.
Mm, yeah,
And there are lots of ways to approach that, and
yeah.
many of them dysfunctional. But the best way is to pick out the one person you can get to the quickest,
Mm,
you,
yeah,
and figure out how to lead yourself. And
yeah.
once you do that, you figured out most of the other people out there. I did a speech for Toastmasters International in
Mm,
the year 2001. They presented me their big Golden Gavel Award, which they give to non-Toastmasters, and I wasn't a member. Uh, so they gave me that award, and my title was All Leadership Begins with Self Leadership. And when I got on the stage, I said, if you can't lead you, please don't lead me.
right. And I think you went to a military academy, or you had when you were younger. Is that correct? And
Yeah, it was the Army National Guard's military academy called Arkansas Military Academy. I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, and you were able to go to a 2 week summer camp, basically a officer's candidate boot camp,
mm,
and then every month you had to come back for a 2 or 3 day uh, drill, they called it, which was, just training for every month throughout the year, and then 2 more weeks, and then you graduate and you get your lieutenant bars.
Wow.
and then you serve. And I had already been trained in the National Guard as uh, a medic and a hospital corpsman, combat medic, hospital corpsman, and this was during the Vietnam era. But I didn't go to war, thank God. I was able to serve domestically in the U.S. And then I decided to go to officers candidate school,
Yeah.
and I was able to do it while still working. Instead of going for 3 months, which most people do in the Army,
Yeah.
they go for 3 months at, say, Fort Benning, Georgia. And at the end of that 3 months, they graduate and they're a new lieutenant. Well, I went to 12 months. So
Yeah.
it was painful, stretched over a year. I'd love to have gotten it over with more quickly, but it was good training. And when it came time, now at the time, I was a clerk at the Urban Renewal Agency in Little Rock, Arkansas,
Wow.
Little Rock Housing Authority. I was making $525 a month. I was overweight, out of shape, smoked 2 packs a day, had never had money, and never knew a person who had money.
Mm,
Okay. My dad was a telephone repairman. So my aspirations were very modest.
yeah.
And I graduate officers candidate school. And evidently, the tactical officers in charge of the school saw something in me that I didn't see in me.
Mm,
And they asked me to be the master of ceremonies for the graduation banquet.
wow.
Well, that was my first public speaking event. I stood up and talked in class in high school, but that's about it. And so here I was put in charge of emceeing a banquet. I didn't know how to MC a banquet.
Yeah.
In fact, I started the banquet off and then sat down and then realized I hadn't introduced the guest of honor seated next to me. So I had to stand up and start over again. Um, but yeah, that was
It's
a big part of my training. And it took me from scared and stupid to a little bit smarter and not so scared.
It's so interesting because, talking about self-leadership and being able to lead ourselves in order to be able to serve others well in leadership really is it, you it I asked about the military because there is a level of discipline and habit building that comes in with that kind of training. And I wondered how that affected you. And yet you leaned into, even through that experience, you still had issues with your self-worth, your identity, and
Hmm.
your belief about yourself. Will you talk about the importance of somebody believing in you?
Yeah. In fact, the TED Talk that you referred to, my little TEDx video,
Yeah,
the title of that is
the
How to
three and a
Believe in
half
Yourself.
million.
Yeah. 8.5 minutes, and it's how to believe in yourself. And the reason I talked about how to believe in yourself is that most of the world will tell you, Carol, you got to believe in yourself.
Yeah,
Okay, how?
right.
And nobody seems to say, here's how. They just say, no, just believe in yourself. Okay, but excuse me, how? And of course, at first, you may not have much to believe in from your point of view. And
Yeah,
so you say, well, it's just ordinary old me. What's to believe in? So, well, believe in the people that have been telling you you've got great potential. Like when I graduated officers candidate school, Andrew McCurry, who was the commandant of the school, he owned a Chevrolet dealership in Heber Springs, Arkansas. So that was his real world job.
yeah.
And after that graduation banquet, where I forgot to introduce him, he said, Cathcart, come here. He said, I want you to come to Heber Springs and meet with me. Uh, I own a Chevrolet dealership and I don't have somebody I'm going to pass it along to. And I'd like to train you to become a Chevy dealer to take over after me.
Wow.
Well, it didn't impact me at the time, but
Right.
that's unbelievable
Yeah.
praise. What an honor, what a glorious gift he
Yeah.
was offering me. And I went there and I met with him, and I chose not to pursue it. Um, but still, jeepers, to have that kind of a huge, let me be your mentor, let me give you my legacy. uh, wow, what was he seeing that I wasn't seeing? So if I couldn't believe in me, at least I could believe he knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe in, if there's not somebody that you think, well, I can put my faith in them, then believe in a system that's been proven to work and commit to the system.
Yeah.
Or like when I was 9 years old, my family took a road trip from Arkansas up to Oklahoma and then Route 66 all the way to the West Coast.
Yeah.
And when we were out the West Coast, my Uncle John and my three cousins, Bruce, Brian, and Johnny, were out there. And they said, hey, there's a brand new place that's just been built called Disneyland. And
Mm.
it's built by the guy on TV. The Mickey Mouse guy? Yeah. So we're all going to Disneyland. You know, they didn't call it Disneyland, it was Disneyland. And so we drove up to this orange grove. The Orange County was literally all orange farms, and went to Disneyland. The first year it was open, this was July of 1956. And that was a long, long time ago. I'll save people the math. I was born in 46. All right, so I'll be 80 this year.
Wow.
But
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
Wait, I
thank you.
want to pause on that for a second because I would have never in a million years guessed that, even though I read the numbers, you know,
Thank you.
what,
Well, I've been told that my vibe is like 20 years younger than
yeah.
my body.
Yeah.
And that's the way it feels to me too. I think inside we're probably always the same age,
Mhm.
but we learn more and become wiser as we grow. And our body, of course, ages.
Yeah.
So our vehicle is older, but we're not necessarily. You
Right.
know, we may be more enlightened, but we're still the same age we were when we were dreaming of things. So
Right.
anyway, we go to Disneyland. I'm 9 years old, and my dad and Uncle John and mom and my little sister Kathy and my aunt Saxon, they went one way, and Bruce, Brian, and Johnny, who had been there before, took charge of little cousin Jimmy, me, and they said, okay, we're going to go see Disneyland. Now, in Disneyland, you pay one fee and you ride everything, right? You
Yeah.
don't have to go buy tickets all the time.
Yeah.
So we went first to Tomorrowland, to Autopia, which was where you get in a little sports car and you drive it around a track. Well, I was 9 years old. And they said, you got to be 54 inches tall to drive your own car. Otherwise, one of our people has to drive you. So I was, but
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. You know, I was 52 inches tall. So they put me in a car with a driver, and it was okay, but wasn't as much fun as being on my own. So I went around the track, so did my cousins, and I come out the exit, and I didn't realize that there's another exit on the other side of the building, but that's where my cousins went out. So they're out there looking for cousin Jimmy, and I'm out here looking for them. And I started calling out to them and nothing. And I looked all around for them and I was afraid to leave that spot
Yeah.
for fear I'd be truly lost. And I started melting down, you know, and crying and just like that and just losing it. And then it hits me. Where are you, Jim? Disneyland. What is Disneyland? The happiest place on earth.
Mm.
What are you doing? I'm crying. This is the happiest place on earth. Come with me. You know, so self leadership. I took myself at 9 years old on
Wow.
a solo journey to explore Disneyland for 5 hours.
Wow.
5 hours, 9 year old alone in Disneyland in
Wow.
1956. Now, today they'd be terrified. The whole park would shut down. But
Yeah.
back then, hey, your kid's lost. Let's go look for him, right? Bruce, Brian, and Johnny had the worst day of their lives because they lost cousin Jimmy and they spent the whole day looking
Okay,
for
look.
me while I'm exploring Tom Sawyer Island and I'm up on stage at the Golden Horseshoe singing Davy, Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. And I'm having the time of my life. And I run into my mom and aunt and my sister, and we reconnect and meet up with the rest of the crew at town hall at 3 o'clock. And sure enough, here come my cousins. Oh my God, we lost him, you know. And so life went on. But
Life.
I didn't have a person to believe in. I
Yeah.
couldn't believe in myself. I didn't have a system to believe in. But
Yeah.
I believed that the opportunity was too great for me not to take advantage of it.
Mm.
It was what seemed to me a once in a lifetime chance to
Yeah.
have the most wonderful adventure I'd ever had.
Wow.
And as it turned out, it was fabulous. And it built my confidence.
And you're really leaning into being neuroscience based, our neuroplasticity, our under any circumstance, our freedom to choose what we think, what our perspective will be, and how we act or react to a
Yeah.
situation. That's an incredible story because you're realizing at a very young age, the evidence you have for that self leadership right there. You made a choice in that 9 year
And
old
and
moment.
it didn't occur to me that that was anything particularly noteworthy until like 40 years later when I was reflecting on it.
Yes. Yeah. It
Wow.
so much of our limiting beliefs, they say over 90% go back to before the age of 8 years old. We're little sponges. We're just taking things in. So
Absolutely.
there was something in your life, in your experience, that I would have guessed that would have led you to that decision. Can you think
Yeah.
of your
And
environment?
I was blessed in that my family loved me. My
Yeah.
dad was kind of like John Wayne. He had been a military officer in the South Pacific during World War II, fighting on Guadalcanal and the Philippines. And
Wow.
at age 22, a young officer, he was made acting mayor of a city in occupied Japan.
Wow.
Wow. 22 years old.
Wow.
He grew up in Thayer, Missouri. Thayer, Missouri is about the size of one of your glasses.
Okay.
It's a tiny little town on the top of Arkansas, bottom of Missouri,
Wow.
and that's where Dad grew up. And so he didn't have any leadership experience. When
Mhm.
he went in the army,
Yeah.
he had been taught how to dig a ditch, how to pound a nail. That was about it. And he went to officer school and graduated and went to war and fought for his life and our lives and came back home and went to work for the phone company where he worked 35 years. So I had a loving family, but I didn't have a family that was teaching me, as I could tell, leadership. But
Right.
Dad taught me self-reliance.
Mhm.
I'd come to him whining about some problem and he'd say, "Well, fix it."
Mhm.
"Well, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Figure it out. But figure it out. Get over. So stop your whining. And he said the classic line of parents of that era: "If you don't stop crying, I'm going to give you something to cry about."
Yeah. That was a
Because thank
classic.
you. You know.
But in light of what your dad said, one of the things that I think many people are struggling with these days is I grew up in the Midwest with very much a pull yourself up by your own bootstrap mentality. And in our leadership, how do we avoid feeling isolated or alone when we feel like we have to figure it all out?
I don't know, and I don't feel that it's that vital to not feel it. I
Okay.
mean, there are a lot of times I felt alone, but I never felt abandoned.
Mm,
And that's important
yeah.
because that's a different mentality altogether.
Yeah.
Uh, I've felt betrayed occasionally by friends and business colleagues over the years, but I never felt like I that it was just me against the world,
Okay.
and that may be part of that. I'm sure is my Christian faith,
Yeah.
because I believe in God and I believe in the Bible,
Yeah.
and but I've never been a particularly easy for me to say religious person.
Yeah.
So I went to church and we never read the Bible at home or talked about it. So it was kind of like, okay, check. I went to church. Now let's go play down by the creek. And so my buddies and I'd go, get our BB guns or whatever and go play down by the creek.
Yeah. I mean, and it's something where we're spiritual beings and physical bodies, and having that spirit relationship, even though I'm neuroscience based, it is very much a body, mind, spirit experience. We're integrated beings.
Absolutely.
And so I really
And you might
appreciate
even
that.
reverse that. It's a spirit, mind, body experience,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
right. Yeah.
because when there's a disturbance in the force, meaning the spirit,
Yeah.
then it shows up in all the others.
Mm.
And when there's a disturbance in the body, it doesn't necessarily affect the other two. You know, like I've got some nicks and dings from doing housework, you know, working, fixing things. But that didn't affect my psyche as far as I know. However, if I'm worried about someone I love or feel guilty about something awful I've done,
Yeah.
then it shows up in everything, including digestion, you know, and physical movement. You know, get a crick in my neck. What's that? Oh, one time I was in Hawaii, and Spencer Johnson, who wrote many, many books, but best known for his most recent, which was called Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah.
That was about 15, 20 years ago. He wrote that. Anyway, he wrote that and he invited me to come to Hawaii and stay at his home and work with him on his next book,
Yeah.
which was called Yes or No, The Guide to Better Decisions, because I was teaching a course called The Art of Choosing Well.
Mm.
And he figured I'd be a good co-author.
Yeah.
So I got off the plane in Hawaii and walked up to him, and he looked down at my belly, which was larger than it had been. And he
Hmm.
patted me there and he said, "What's that about?" And I hadn't thought about what's that about. I just knew it was there. And I thought,
Right.
huh, I know what it's about.
Mm.
I said, it's about lack of closure. I've got a whole bunch of open-ended things going on, and I need to get some of them finalized. And so I've lost the discipline I usually have about staying fit.
Yeah.
And sure enough, like I was coaching a woman the other day. She called me. I coached her over the last 6 months. And she called me and she said, "Hey, I want you to know I got this award. I did this. I've got this going on in my career, and I've lost 10 pounds without dieting."
Yeah.
The key phrase is without dieting.
Yeah.
Because when you get the spirit right, the others fall in line.
Everything falls into place. That's a
Yeah,
such a fantastic point. And it is noticing too, pausing and noticing the body. It's interesting because the subconscious mind is the rule keeper. It doesn't make the decisions. It's not proactive. It just follows what we tell it to follow, basically. And it goes throughout the spinal column. We recognize that now. It is not just in the brain. It's super interesting, right?
that's right. Well, I've got a client that I'm mentoring uh, who he was told as a child, a young man, that he would probably never graduate high school and he should just accept that his life was not going to be particularly noteworthy.
Wow.
He had some conditions that would limit him severely. Well, he's overcome all those. He's become a college professor. He's written a book and he's started a podcast.
Wow.
What? What? You know, so even when we've been told something that doesn't work, we can rewrite that. You
Right.
know, it's
Yeah.
the fact that you've been told it doesn't make it true. The
Right.
fact that a parent or an authority figure said it doesn't make it true.
Mhm.
So the first question to ask yourself is if I think I'm not good at math, or if I think I'm uh, clumsy, or if I think I'm instinctively late, not just habitually late, because a
Yeah.
habit can be changed, um, then first off, is that true? Well,
Right.
yeah, because all no, wait a minute. Is that objectively, factually true? Can we prove it? No. Okay. Who told you? What makes you think they're so smart?
Mm.
You know, a lot of times we tell ourselves, everything in the world we know is limited by what we've been exposed to.
Yeah.
So if there are 800 million books in the world, how many have you read? What makes you think you get it?
Right.
You know,
Right.
and so let's say you've read 1,000 books. Wow, that's a lot of books. Okay, but 1,000 books is still the needed little bit. You know,
Yeah.
it's an atom out of the universe, right? So, out of those books and all the life experiences you've had, that's what you've been exposed to. So everything you know is based on conclusions that you made about everything you've been exposed to.
Right.
That was limited by what you noticed,
Yeah.
because a whole lot of what you were exposed to, you never noticed. I
Right.
never knew that building was there. I never realized that his car was blue. I never heard those dogs before,
Yeah.
right? Whatever. But anyway, your exposure is limited by your
Right.
awareness. Your
Awareness.
awareness is filtered by your point of view.
Yeah.
So if you think, I'm a loser, I'm a creep, right? I don't deserve a good life, then it's getting even smaller. And then what you retain, because a lot of times what we remember of something is only a fraction of what really was there. You say, I always remember, that our neighbor hated me.
They
Which,
estimate
which,
50%.
yeah,
Yeah.
which neighbor hated you? Mr. Jenkins. No, he didn't.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, he bragged about you. He admired you. What? And boom, you got to reshift your entire knowledge base
Mhm.
because your worldview was built on a lie that you made up by yourself without realizing it.
Right. So incredibly powerful. And so, the awareness part and the retention, but narrowing it down to nobody has all knowledge. What is your point of view? What's your perspective on things? And
Oh, quick story, and
yeah,
pardon me, but you're pushing my story buttons.
yeah,
There
okay,
was
I
a
love
guy
it.
named there was a young guy named Jason who was 19 years old, not my grandson Jason, in case anyone suspects that. It was a young guy who was at a party with some business friends, and he was the son of a colleague. And we started talking. This was in the 1970s, 80s, 80s. And we started talking about the Beatles, the musical group.
Yeah.
And he started telling me things about the Beatles. And I said, excuse me. I said, that's not true. Yes, it is. How would you, he continued to pontificate. And I said, Jason, stop. I said, in 1964, I was a senior in high school. That's when the Beatles came to America. I saw live the Ed Sullivan Show when they were on it in my parents' living room. So the first time anyone in America saw the Beatles, I was watching too. And then I told him a few other
How
Beatles things
cool.
that I knew. And
Yeah.
I said, now tell me again in your 19 years how you know more about the Beatles and understand them better than I would, having experienced them that way. And he said, well, I'm 19. I said, well, I've been 19 twice.
Right, right. And that's so powerful, right? And hopefully he got the message, like,
Yeah,
you
maybe.
know, you're still waiting. Um, when you're dealing with uncertainty and pressure right now, presently, when those things come up for you, what's your system for dealing with that? How do you
Well, the first thing is notice more. If you want to know more in any situation, if you want to be wiser, more intelligent, more enlightened, more in control, the first thing you got to do is notice more. So let's say you're lost in the dark, okay? You
Yeah,
have no clue where you are. You've been kidnapped and dropped off somewhere, and you have no clue where it is, and it's dark. All
yeah.
right, but you're not being harmed. So you're just standing there. First thing to do is get your bearings, right?
Mhm.
Where am I? Let's look at a map and find the you are here part, right? Where am I? And you notice that it's not completely dark, that your eyes are adjusting to the dark and you can see trees, and
Mhm.
it looks like that's a path,
Yeah,
and you don't hear any wolves nearby, no bears, right? It's cool, so there's probably not any snakes out. And you think, okay, I'm going to follow that path. And so immediately you've improved your situation a little bit,
yeah.
right? Now you may still be terrified and feel like this is wrong. I shouldn't have to endure this. Well, good luck causing a should to change your circumstances, because all that is a it's thing that it's a mental process that allows us to push blame out there,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
Uh, but still, all leadership begins with self leadership. So you got to get yourself out of that situation. And that's what I do is I just pause and chill. All right, what's wrong? I am angry. I'm righteously indignant because I was wronged.
Yeah.
All right, what can I do about that? First thing I can do is calm down. I don't want to calm down. Well, too bad, Jim. You're going to have to if you want to gain control. I'm going for a walk. What? Nothing. You go for a walk, right? And just notice more. Notice things that are not about you.
Mhm.
Notice birds, notice traffic patterns, notice clouds, anything. Notice your own breathing.
Yeah.
I asked my grandson one time when he was 12, he was running track in school,
Yeah.
and at a run, he did like 5K. And I asked him at the end of it, what did you think about during the run? He said, I don't know. I was just thinking about my breathing.
Mhm.
Wow. I would have been thinking about everything under the sun. You know,
Yeah.
I wonder if Donald Duck got out of that dilemma in the cartoon problem that he had. You know, I wonder if Putin's still in charge of Russia. I wonder if the waves come in regular intervals or erratically.
Yeah.
You know, my mind would go everywhere. His was focused on his breathing.
Yeah. Wow.
And as you might expect, he did well
I
and
bet he did.
continues to do well because the first thing he learned was self-leadership. He was doing his homework night. And this is a different Jason, the good one. This is my grandson, who's now 25. When he was, I don't know, 13 or less, he was doing his math homework. And his dad came into his room and he said, what is that? And Jason had his homework here, and he had a bunch of M&M candies lined up along the side of his desk. And he said, what's up with that? And Jason said, when I complete one of these and get it right, I have one of the candies. Well, a whole lot of kids just would have gone and eaten them all.
Yeah.
But Jason had the self-discipline to say, okay, I'm going to reward myself, but first I've got to do the task. So he took charge of being his own drill sergeant.
Wow. That's
That's pretty
incredible.
cool.
It is a cool. And we're our brains are actually our systems are actually wired for reward. So what a beautiful
Yeah.
thing he did, you know? Um, you've spoken many times in China. China's so relevant in the news presently, right now,
Oh,
today.
yeah.
Um, it- what motivated you to go to China? How did that happen? And what was your experience like?
Boy, I could go on for a couple of days. I've been to 25 major cities in China. Now,
Wow,
when I say major cities, I'm talking about multi-million person cities.
25.
In America, we say, you know, New York is big, LA is big, Houston is big, Chicago's big. Uh-uh. You go to China, Beijing is like three or four New Yorks. You know,
Wow.
Shanghai is a couple of Houstons with Chicago thrown in. And, you know, LA, you take Chengdu, other cities, they're huge. 25 million, 30, 60 million in the greater Beijing area, I think, some ungodly number. There's something beyond human comprehension. And I've been to these cities and I was speaking to what I guess over there would have to be considered a medium-sized meeting, 1 to 3,000 people. And I've spoken, I don't know how many times, 50, I don't know, let's say
Yeah.
50 times,
Yeah.
um, to groups of 1,000 to 3,000 people for 6 hours at a time.
Wow.
Me in English going through an interpreter in Mandarin. No, no headsets. I'd say a paragraph, she would say a paragraph, or he would say a paragraph. So I've done that now at least
Incredible.
50 times all over China, 20 separate round trips from the US over there and back. How did it start? I was in San Diego at the National Speakers Convention, and a colleague came up and said, Jim, I'd like you to meet Dr. David Chu from Shanghai. He has a boutique speakers bureau and he has only 10 uh, talents, you know, speakers. And they are John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus,
Yeah.
Mark Victor Hansen, co author of Chicken Soup series, um, Tom Hopkins, sales trainer, Brian Tracy, motivational speaker,
Yeah.
Bob Proctor, inspirational speaker.
Yeah.
He said he's only got 10 clients and one of them is in his 90s and retiring and he wants you. And I
Wow.
said, basically, I said, little old me. And I really, I didn't say it that way, but I meant it that way because I thought those are big names.
Yeah.
Who am I? And I said to David, Chew, are you sure? Me? And he said, Jim, I've been following you for a few years.
Yeah.
And you've been president of the National Speakers Association. You've won every award possible. You've gotten the Golden Gavel. You've been inducted in the Speaker Hall of Fame, Sales and Marketing Hall of Fame. You've written 20 plus books. You've been all over creation as a speaker. What point are you not getting that you're somebody?
Yeah.
And I said, well, okay, but I don't get it that I'm in that league. So he
Yeah.
brings me to China on an annual contract. And the first trip I do like 4 presentations and I'm loving it. And the
Mhm.
way I'm approaching it is just like all his other speakers, which was I'm another old white guy from America in a suit.
Yeah.
And I would speak on leadership or sales or whatever generic topic like communication. And I noticed early on that what the people were responding most to was the part of my message about living a meaningful and satisfying life,
Mhm.
because they never been talked to about that.
Mhm.
They're taught, grow up and do what we told you to do,
Yeah.
right? And then repeat, rinse and repeat forever.
Yeah.
Whereas over here, they say, tell me, Carol, what makes your heart sing? Good, let's get you into that field, right? But not over there. So I'm talking, and during my talk, I cover that, and they're responding to it. So I started tailoring my talk with more and more of that.
Wow.
I became the most popular of all 10 speakers,
Mhm.
and David Chu stopped booking the other speakers and booked only me.
Incredible.
But from 2015 to 2019, December of 2019, he went from booking several of us to booking mostly me to booking only me and one other, and then booking only me, period. And I ended up on one trip, I was in country 71 days, going from city to city to city. And
Wow.
Kitty, my favorite translator, Kitty, little woman, Kitty Chun, she said, Jim, of all our speakers, you are the most Chinese. I said, what does that mean?
Yeah.
She said, you respect us.
Mm.
You don't try to change us.
Yeah.
You tell us the truth. You're nice to us.
Mhm.
You're learning our language. You want to know about our customs. You respect our government, the fact that they're in charge of everything. And she said, you're the most Chinese.
Wow.
What a compliment. And
Right.
I've been back since. I went back in 24 or 2024, and I'll be going back, I'm sure, pretty soon.
Incredible.
Amazing.
What an incredible experience. And thank you for sharing that,
You bet.
because there, I have limited understanding, but I understand it's more of an honor shame based society and that they're following, like you said, instructions, and particularly in the family too. Parents still dictate lives, even for adults. And so you have this beautiful experience where you went and you honored them and you learned about them and maybe even became, connected, partly Chinese in there.
And I was fun. The other speakers tended to be other speakers. And they
Serious.
would come into in the room, it's filled with thousands of people. They've got music going and lights all over and decorations. And ladies and gentlemen, Karen Register, boom, 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 like Rocky Balboa. And so the speaker comes into the room with an entourage of security personnel to keep the crowd away because the crowd all wants to get a selfie. We take photo, we take photo. And so I came into the room like that and I looked around and I realized how serious everybody was taking it. And
Yeah.
so I didn't. I ran, boom, 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 boom. I ran in a suit, ran to the stage,
Wow.
jumped up on the stage, and danced around to the music, clapped my hands, and just enjoyed the moment with them. And then I did this, and they all sat down. And then I turned to my translator, and she introduced me, and I started to speak. But it was so different. They had never seen that.
Yeah.
And if something went wrong, I would handle it. If and one time I was rushed. A guy got overcome with emotion, and he
Wow.
wanted to bring a stuffed panda to
Yeah.
me as a gift. And
Yeah.
so, even though there were security personnel in front of the stage, he ran down the aisle and up onto the stage to
Wow.
give me this gift.
Mm.
And I stepped to the side and they grabbed him, but I went over closer to him before they took him forcibly off the stage. And I said, thank you, made eye contact, at least gave him a moment of feeling okay. But
Yeah.
he had been very foolish, and he got, I'm sure, in a lot of trouble. But at least he made eye contact with the speaker that he
Yeah.
was trying to connect with.
Yeah.
And when we would see beggars on the street, occasionally I would stop and interact with the beggar, like shake their hand. I think there was one guy on the Yangtze River cruise that I was leading a seminar. We stopped and did an excursion on shore, and I saw this beggar who couldn't walk. His legs were
Wow.
gnarled, and I reached down and shook his hand and smiled at him and talked with him, even though we couldn't understand each other, and then gave him some money. And my interpreter, no, my guide, Fiona, she said, Jim, why did you do that? He's unclean. I said, the only reason he's unclean is because he doesn't have the capacity to be clean.
Yeah.
He's been born with this deformity, and he sees the whole world from up their noses, right? And
Yeah.
I wanted to give him a moment of feeling like a human being.
Mm. Yeah.
And I said, if I could speak Mandarin, I would have sat in the dirt with him and talked.
Yeah.
And they were just amazed that I would do that.
Yeah. Wow.
But somebody's got to start, right? By the time I'd been doing that for 6 years,
Yeah.
they were doing it.
Mm.
The
Wow.
Chinese people were doing it. They would stop on the street and acknowledge a beggar and give them some money because there are a lot of beggars over there.
Wow.
Wow.
That I've heard that's improved. With the current economic conditions, but making somebody feel seen and heard and valued by sitting and acknowledging them and conversing with them is so incredibly powerful. And who knows what seeds you clearly planted with the people, that's known, but
Yeah.
what what happened in that man's life from that experience, you know?
One more quick story about that. I was in Georgetown, Malaysia, near Kuala Lumpur, Penang, um, and I was leading a mastermind retreat. I mentor people to become professional experts, independent experts.
Yeah.
And so I was over there doing this with a group of 30 people that had signed up with me for a whole year. And we'd been all over China. So our big graduation 5-day event was in Penang, Malaysia. And we went to Georgetown for dinner one evening, and we went through a fishing village. And we're walking along through the village, and there are all kinds of tourist shops, with hats and souvenirs and things like that. And there are vendors on the street. Like one guy had a python, and you could take your picture with it, right?
Wow.
And and we're walking along, and there's a guy sitting in the dirt, and he's got an artificial leg. He's wearing sweatpants with holes in them, and so you can see his artificial leg. And he's dark complected, and he's got some pretty big scars on him, so you can tell he's been through hell.
Yeah.
And he's, I don't know, 30 years old, if that, but he looks like he could be 100 years old too.
Mhm.
And he's got an old beat up guitar, and he's playing it, and he's got handwritten sheet music in front of him that he created, and he's doing songs. And I stopped it. No, we're, I don't know, a dozen people. We're walking through this area, and I'm kind of the duck leading the ducklings. And Kitty is at my elbow as always to translate. So we stop, And I turned to him and I said, "Do you speak English?" He said, "A little." I said, "Do you know any American songs?" He said, "I know Hotel California." And I said, "Well, I'm a singer and a guitarist. Could I sing it with you?" And he said, "Yeah." And so I sat down in the dirt with my leg against his artificial leg. And he was looking for his music. And he said, "Do you want to play it?" And I said, "Sure." So he hands me this old beat up guitar and it's in tune. And so I start playing and singing, and he's singing harmony, and he's
Wow.
keeping percussion on his artificial leg.
Wow. Wow. Uh,
And we do Hotel California, and all the tourists are just doesn't doesn't the American doesn't teacher know that this man is low class, that you don't touch people like that.
yeah.
And so we finished the song, and he picked up a few more tips, and I gave him a generous tip. And then I put my arm around him and asked for photos, and we took photos.
Wow.
And I asked him his name, and he said his name was Halif. And I told him my name, and we just had a nice chat. And I thanked him profusely for giving me the opportunity. And then we walked on. Now, we stopped a few feet later, and I said to Kitty, "Gather the group." And so we all gathered. And I said, "Ask them, why did I do that?" And she asked. And they said, "Because you love to play guitar and sing." No, I did that because every day he gets up in some dangerous place that he lives that's probably infested with rats and who knows what, and tries to clean himself a little bit and tries to find some food. And then he comes down here and he can't walk very well. And he
Yeah.
comes to this spot and he's hoping nobody else has taken the spot today because he's got a pole to lean back against. And he sits in the dirt and he plays songs and he prays that he'll get enough money from people walking by and that it won't rain, so that he can have enough money to survive another day. That's his day. And everyone in his world looks down on him. I said, I wanted to give him a moment of feeling like a regular human being. So
Mm.
I sat down beside him and sang with him. And then he offered to share. And so we shared an enjoyable time together. And I put my arm around him to let him know that I meant it. I was not doing this for photo op. And although it was literally a photo op, I said, "How long do you think he will remember that?" And they said, "For the rest of his life."
Right.
And then I paused and I said, "And so will I." And then I said, "Every one of you is capable of doing something like that every day.
Mm.
And if you don't, you deny the rest of the world your gift."
Mm.
And boy, did that resonate.
Wow. The value of a human life, that we matter. Um, it's, I'm emotional about it because I lost my brother to suicide.
Oh,
And,
I lost my sister to suicide.
so yeah, knowing,
Yeah,
communicating, using our gifts, love that we're worthy, that we're valuable, that we're masterpieces, that we're treasure.
yeah.
What
By
I,
the way, I'm not positive my sister's death was suicide, but
okay,
we suspect it was.
okay.
Yeah,
To spend time with somebody, treating them as a human and valuing them and their life and the impact this has had. May we all be doing this. As she said, may we all be doing this. And
yeah.
um, as we wrap up here, how
Oh,
how do I know it's gone fast? How has
yeah.
abundance been a part of the story that you speak about? And speaking of identity, people's wealth identity. Where
Mhm.
does that come into play with the work that you do as a speaker
Well,
and
I
author?
struggled for, pardon
Yeah,
me for
well, I was
interrupting,
going to
but
say as a
for
speaker,
years I struggled with the belief that it was not okay to get rich. And it was me misinterpreting something my mother had said when I
hmm,
was, who knows, 8 years old.
yeah,
Um, but she was criticizing a neighbor who was flashy about their wealth.
yeah,
They owned a Cadillac. He managed a grocery store, but he owned a Cadillac, and mom thought that was ostentatious, and so she criticized it to
mm,
me. And so I assumed from that she thought it was not okay to get wealthy. So here I was in Palm Springs, California, 50 years later, and I called mom and I said, "Hey, would you do me a favor?" And she said, "Sure." I said, "Would you say the following words to me? Jim, it's okay to become rich." She said, "Why would you want me to say that?" I said, "Because I've had this echoing message in my head that
yeah,
it's wrong to be rich.
yeah,
And I need to know from your voice, I need to physically hear it. It's okay to," she said, "Well, it's okay to get rich." And I said, "Well, thank you for that."
wow,
That uncorked a genie.
yeah,
And I appreciate it. She said, "Well, I don't see why it's so important." But I said, "Thank you anyway." And so many of us carry that around. But when you talk about abundance, there's wealth abundance, there's health abundance, there's friendship abundance, there's love abundance,
yeah,
there's intellectual abundance. We need to live abundantly in all mental, physical, family, social, spiritual, career, financial, and emotional, the whole thing. And I think what you're doing, Carol, is absolutely powerful
thank you.
because people come to your show because they want to become more wealthy.
Yeah,
But you're taking them beyond the superficial definition of wealth
yeah,
and showing them ways to become worthy of wealth,
mm,
to become a wealth generator instead of just a wealth acquirer.
mhm.
And that's a phenomenal service. So God bless you in what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate this. I ask people for tips when I interview them, but you've given us so many gold nuggets throughout this. I'm really excited to share this. And I also would love to let people know how we can get in touch with you and be a part of your
Oh
world.
yeah. Well, my name is the key to the kingdom. Cathcart, Cathcart, Cathcart.com. And it's Jim Cathcart on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube and everything. But Cathcart.com is brand new, 1 month old.
Okay.
I've completely revamped it, did what would be
Wow.
about a 25 or $30,000 revamp of my website, filled with free videos, filled with podcasts, with blog posts, with photographs, with interviews, with testimonials, with I mean, if you're building a website for yourself, you might want to use this as a model and duplicate some of the things I'm doing in your own style, different from mine. But I'm a mentor to independent experts. So if you're a speaker, a coach, a consultant, an author, a podcaster, a influencer, then I'm your mentor. And I mentor people, I handpick people and mentor them over a 6 month period. And then I certify them as a certified professional expert.
Wow.
And so far, I've certified Brian Tracy and Les Brown and
Wow.
Patricia Fripp and Eric Swanson and Todd Duncan. And I mean, it just goes on and on and on. I've got lots of substantial people: Tony Alessandra, Dr. Nito Kubain,
Wow.
Dennis Waitley. So it's a powerful group of 41 people so far and growing.
Wow.
So check it out.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
I'm so glad. Yeah. Wow.
Me too. And thanks, Eric Swanson, for connecting us.
Yes,
You
very
bet.
much. Shout out to Eric.
Okay.